Welcome to Daily Life Connection. Thanks for joining me again today as we continue to look at the God of the desert. The God of the desert. Yesterday we talked about that marvelous verse in Deuteronomy about God being in the howling wilderness waste land. And today we're going to talk about the God of the desert, and we're going to talk about the God who provides rivers of refreshing in the desert place. There's a couple of wonderful passages in Isaiah that talk about this. One is in Isaiah 43 and verse 19. I'm about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert, or streams in the wasteland, one translation says. Isn't that beautiful? I'll make streams in the wasteland. God's willing to waste his precious refreshing in wasted desert places. Oh, that's good news for us. And then in Isaiah 35 and verse 6, one that many of you will be familiar with, waters shall break forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. Streams in the desert. You know, I've watched a few videos or documentaries on people exploring in the desert and desert places on the planet. And sometimes, you know, if they get low on water, they begin, there's nothing important to them except getting water, because they know without it they will perish, that the desert will have the last word. It will decide their fate unless they can find water. And so they're looking for it anywhere that it might possibly be. And sometimes it's a little gross, it seems like, where they get it. They find a muddiest little hole somewhere, but they'll drink the water just because they need it. That in contrast to refreshing streams in the desert, rivers in the wasteland. You know, when we're going through those dry times, and you know, I hear people talk about it, and I guess probably I've experienced it too, when it seems our spiritual journey gets a little dry. It seems like there's been nothing fresh and new in our spiritual journey for a while. And it's okay to be there. It's just life. We sometimes end up there. But don't give up the thought that God will provide streams in the desert. He will provide refreshing in those difficult times. He will give us what is necessary to sustain our life. He will make sure that the desert places don't have the last word on us, that they don't destroy us, that they don't ruin us. And you know, the scriptures talk about it in James. It talks about how the trials that come test our faith. But faith, as we hang on in those times, produces endurance, and endurance produces maturity and completeness, rather than to destroy us. That heat and the dry air of the desert will destroy us unless we have something from outside us, water, to sustain us. And in the desert places of life, if we don't have something from the outside of us to sustain us, to refresh us, to enable us to keep functioning, that's just good news, isn't it? The refreshing streams in the desert come to enable us to function as we were created to function. The body, the kidneys, the heart, the circulatory system, all of our body, it can't survive without, it can't function the way it should without water. And the same with our spirit. We need spiritual refreshing and spiritual water in order to function the way we were created and designed to function. And God says, I'll do that. I'll do that. No matter where you find yourself, you may have wandered off the path and gotten lost in the desert yourself. It may be your fault. But he said, you know what? I'll provide streams in the desert for you. I'll bring time of refreshing. I'll supply you with what you need in order to be able to function the way you were created to function. That's really good news. Our God is a refreshing stream in the desert. I love that imagery of somebody being in the desert and the heat and the exhaustion and the sheer discouragement of realizing that you're not going to make it, and they stumble around a corner and they hear a little brook bubbling, and they find a refreshing little spring coming out of a rock face somewhere, or out of a little pool down hidden down in the little valley. And all of a sudden everything changes. All of a sudden I'm going to live. I can make it. I can drink my fill. I'm going to be able, this desert is not going to have the last word on my life. This stream, oh, this is so good. This stream of refreshing water has the last word for me, not the desert. And so when we're in those difficult, howling wastelands in our lives, feeling alone, feeling unsupported, feeling misunderstood maybe, or accused of something that's not true about us, or and we're just feeling like it's just oppressive, like the heat of the desert. Look for the refreshing streams of God. You may find it in the Word of God where you read it. You may find it in a song. You may find it, the other day, I just share this with you, but the other day I was just here in my office, and I was going to have a time of prayer, and I often light a little incense. I love incense. And I went to light the incense, and joy welled up within inside me, like, where did that come from? And it was just that one, it was like a bubbling pool of fresh water in the desert, and it just refreshed me, and it renewed me, and it restored me, and it put a smile on my face. I pray that for you today, that if you're in one of those desert times, that somewhere that well of living water will bubble up inside you, and whether it's through another person, through the Word, through a story, through song, whatever it may be, and it will just revitalize you and enable you to realize this situation is not going to have the last word. What God is supplying me with will enable me to be sustained through it and be victorious through it. That's good news. God bless you. We'll talk again tomorrow.